In today's video, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson goes on MSNBC and pleads for the United Nations to step in and help remove federal agents from the city of Chicago, even as the new data comes out revealing Operation Midway Blitz has driven down crime since they've entered the city. And so we're breaking it all down, showing you how each side is presenting their case and what it means for the people caught in the middle. But let's start with the drive-by shooting that occurred where an illegal migrant attacked ICE agents and eventually they were captured and arrested.
A breaking update right now to a story that we've been reporting all afternoon. A suspect is now in custody in connection with Saturday's shooting targeting Border Patrol agents in this mess in Chicago. DHS says he is a criminal illegal alien from Mexico with a prior felony. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin joins us live from Chicago with the breaking news on this. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Martha, that is the breaking development that Border Patrol agents, or federal agents, I should say, now have a suspect in custody for firing at Border Patrol agents on Saturday. The video we have is after the shots were fired. People mobbed to the scene. Chicago police showed up to control the scene. But DHS says Saturday morning, Border Patrol agents were operating in the predominantly Hispanic Little Village neighborhood when a man drove up in a Jeep, opened fire, and drove away. No one was shot, but investigators collected shell casings and video from the scene. There was a joint investigation of the FBI, ATF, and Chicago police. That suspect is from Mexico and, again, in custody.
They've got a suspect in custody, an illegal alien that has a past conviction for firearms, a past felony conviction for firearms. This suspect's in custody, and they're pursuing leads based on this suspect. It appears he was in the Jeep, and he was armed.
Now, over the weekend, DHS also released pictures of federal vehicles that were damaged. The agency says at least 4 cars were rammed while operating over the weekend. They were also boxed in and pelted with everything from bricks to paint cans. On top of that, an alert went out to Border Patrol warning them that the leadership of the street gang, Latin Kings, has put out a directive to shoot on sight immigration officers and federal agents operating in Chicago as part of Operation Midway Blitz. Martha, back to you.
Incredible. Mike Tobin, thank you very much. HHS Secretary.
Now, within doing my research for this particular story, you'd think that this would get some pretty decent attention when it comes to the news cycle. Border Patrol agents being shot at by an illegal migrant in a major city, right? Worth some news time. But unfortunately, the mainstream media refuses to cover stories like this one. CNN didn't mention anything about federal agents being shot at, and they didn't report that the suspect was caught. And MSNBC, forget it. You'll never hear it from them. So besides the local news outlets providing you with the on-the-scene coverage that typically most local news networks will give you, this one was buried, and that is just pathetic because it continues to demonstrate how the media will mislead and manipulate the American public about what's really going on. But of course, it only gets crazier. Take a listen.
Now, Tricia McLaughlin with DHS put out a statement today that they're not leaving Chicago and noted that since the start of Midway Blitz, homicides are down 16%, shootings are down 35%, robberies down 41%, carjackings down 48%, transit crime down 20%. And if you look at the numbers from the mayor's own dashboard, they're even more dramatic. Gary McCarthy is the former police superintendent here in Chicago, and he told me that the bellwether for how crime impacts the average citizen is robbery. And if you look at the mayor's own numbers, robberies are down 44%.
Wow.
Without any help from Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson or Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, ICE agents have single-handedly driven down crime in the city of Chicago, all while Democrat leadership continues to try and sabotage and obstruct them at every turn. And instead of Brandon Johnson even showing a shred of gratitude for the work they're doing, he goes on MSNBC not to condemn the attacks on federal agents, not to demand justice for what's happening in his own city, but to cry and beg the United Nations to step in and remove ICE. Think about that for a second. Federal agents risk their lives to help clean up his own city, and he continues to side against them. You can't make this up. Take a listen.
Now, you've asked the United Nations Human Rights Council to scrutinize ICE's actions in your city, requesting that the council hold a special session on what you've called a worsening human rights crisis in the U.S. under President Trump. Your request followed a federal judge issuing an injunction last week that limits ICE's use of force in Chicago under Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino. What do you hope to accomplish by bringing the world's attention to what's happening in your city, Mr. Mayor?
Well, look, the city of Chicago has longed for universal human rights to be applied locally. And, you know, either our human rights are universal or they're meaningless. What we have seen is a great deal of terror that has been executed across our city. It has had a profound impact on our day-to-day. I mean, we literally had a preschool teacher ripped out of her workplace.
Stop. This is all just another lie Brandon Johnson is trying to spin because he knows most people won't actually look this stuff up. And for Mayor Brandon Johnson, whose approval rating is in the single digits, at this point, who knows, 8%, 6%, it just keeps on dropping. He can use all the political points he can get. And so what does he do? He goes for the easy target, painting federal agents as the villains. Plays well with his base. But here's the truth he won't tell you. That woman he referenced wasn't at work. She wasn't teaching. Federal agents then walk into a class and drag her out in front of her students like he wants you to believe. Law enforcement officers, because that's what these federal agents are, were attempting to pull her over, and she refused. And so she parked on school grounds, ran inside, knowing that if they caught her, she would be detained. That's why the agents went in. They didn't storm a classroom. The school day didn't even begin yet. But Brandon Johnson can't help himself. Lying is the only thing he knows how to do with situations like this. Because if he actually told the truth, just gave you the facts, then he would actually have to give federal agents some credit. And as a result, the president some credit also. And you know he can't do that.
And detained. We've seen individuals with documents and as well as those without documents detained by these Border Patrol and these ICE agents. Indiscriminate the releasing of tear gas against the people in our city. You know, we've had Black Hawk helicopters swarm over the apartments and homes of families on the south side of Chicago, where you've seen black families put in one van and detained, and ostensibly undocumented families placed in another van, while at the same time, the president is withholding food from the people in this city. I spoke with a seniors on Friday where they're barely receiving $10 to $12 on their SNAP cards, and it's making it almost impossible for them to survive. And so whether it's the unconstitutional acts that are being carried out by the Trump administration or the fact that food and medicine has been cut off, the situation has worsened, and we're calling for the Human Rights Council to come to Chicago to see firsthand what our people are experiencing right now.
What makes it hard for people to survive in the city of Chicago really isn't a mystery. Now, you would think Democrats love their government programs, right? But you would at least think that those programs are there for American citizens, but not so fast. Welfare use by nativity and legal status. This comes from CIS.org, meaning you don't got to worry about me spinning it. You can look it up yourself. Did you know any welfare, legal migrants, households, and illegal headed households make up a majority of our welfare? Cash assistance by illegal headed households and legal migrant households make up a majority. Food assistance are made up a majority by legal migrants and illegal headed households, along with Medicaid, as well as housing. But Mayor Brandon Johnson probably doesn't see anything wrong with this. But let's turn to Tom Homan because he has something to say about this nonsense too. Take a listen.
Tom, this is just pure lunacy, but what is your reaction to all of that?
He just proved he's not that smart, right? I mean, asking the United Nations to interfere with ICE enforcing U.S. law, it's like asking an arsonist how to stop a fire. Because the UN, remember, the IOM, the part of the UN, helped fund the mass migration during the Biden administration 4 years, spending millions upon millions of dollars helping that migration, international migration, come to the United States. So, the United Nations is not going to tell President Trump what to do. President Trump was put in office on the promise of making this country safe again, on the promise of having the historic deportation operation. That's exactly what America is getting. Every criminal alien ICE and Border Patrol takes off the street makes this country safer. We have the most secure border in the history of the nation right now because of leadership of President Trump, the men and women of the Border Patrol, and because ICE, what ICE is doing in the interior every day, they've sent a message across the globe. Don't spend your life savings, cross the border illegally, think you're going to get away in the United States. Because of what ICE is doing, people aren't spending their life savings, putting themselves in harm's way. Thousands of people aren't dying making that journey. Thousands of Americans aren't dying from fentanyl because of that secure border. But the actions of the interior, the ICE and Border Patrol, has a lot to do why we have the most secure border in the history of this nation today.
Listen, at the end of the day, I believe in law and order. And when you decide to break the law, there are going to be people who get caught and there are going to be people who get away. But that's the risk you take when you decide to break the law. We don't get to pick and choose which laws should be followed and which laws shouldn't. When you decide to go down that road, that's when things get real murky. Because then it's, well, if we can break that law and it's okay for that one not to be followed, how about this one also? And before you know it, you have mass chaos in your country. And so for all the people crying and complaining about how mean or how cruel ICE is being, complain to your Democrat leadership, because they had plenty of times where they did not need Republican support to pass legislation. They had the supermajority. And instead, they focused on giving you Obamacare. And look where that got us. Anyway, I want to hear back from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, the best way you can show your support and that you enjoyed the content is by smashing that like button. That tells me you like the video. And subscribe for more breakdowns like this. And as always, until next time.